not from an athletic standpoint, but just people. Like,
Sorry about that.
hold my calls, Ian. Just hold it.
Exactly.
My wife found me there too. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about your career. I mean, I know we met once, and you've had such an incredible career. Now that you're, we're both kind of in our second half, and now it's about significance. Like, how has your mind shifted from just chasing it now to now doing something that has impact?
Goal for me is having the ability to be proactive as opposed to reactive. When I was at Nike, I say this all the time. I'd be driving to work and I'd have this plan in my head for what the day was going to be and everything I was going to get done that day. And within the first 15 minutes of sitting down in my office, that plan had completely exploded. And I was reacting all day to everything that was happening, as opposed to having the time to be able to think and be proactive instead of being reactive. And to me, the ability to be proactive is kind of a luxury. You have to be in a position, or things have to be set up in such a way that you have the time and the ability to have thinking time to where you can plan and you can be proactive as opposed to reacting to everything that's going on around you. And it's a challenge, but I also consider it to be a luxury because not everybody has the ability to do that.
When did your mind switch to the value of time? Because I know I probably didn't get into my 40s until I realized how valuable time is because how quick it goes. What were you there early on your career?
I mean, I used to say it all the time. Before you could get the internet on an airplane. I mean, for me, spending so much time on airplanes was actually a peaceful time where you had thinking time. Because a road trip on that plane ride gave the ability to relax and be inaccessible and have the ability to think and plan and be thoughtful about everything that you're trying to do, as opposed to reacting to the stuff that was happening around you. And then, now you have the internet and, forget about it. Those days are over too.
Let's just going back to Nike for a second, and we're going to roll all the way up to where you are now. But what did you learn about Nike? What did you learn about yourself when you were there? Did you feel like you were just drinking out of a fire hydrant the whole time, or did you feel like you could really get ahead of the game and kind of figure out who you were in the marketplace?
I started at Nike in 1983, and it was very much an entrepreneurial business. And we in sports marketing were charged with being entrepreneurs within our sport categories, because our job was not only to find the best talent we could find in the world, the future number ones. And, it wasn't just enough to do that. It was like to add to the value in that signing came when we were able to integrate that athlete into the business. So, Phil used to always say to us, okay, so it's one thing to sign an athlete, but you got to integrate them into marketing, advertising, product, PR. I mean, we need to get the full benefit of that signing. And that's really where the value for the spend came into play. So as entrepreneurs, it was like, okay, you would look at somebody in terms of who they were or where they were or what part of the world they came from, and how would that signing have an impact on that business, whether it was the business at Nike itself or the business, when we started expanding out behind just having the top tier superstars, the John McEnroes and the Andre Agassi's. It wasn't enough to just have those guys. Now we needed, the top player in Germany, or the top player in Korea, or the top player in France, so that there was your top tier athletes, and then there were the regional athletes, and it just got to that point. And so we were always looking at the athlete from that perspective. And I think what's happened is, as a function of size, that you go from being entrepreneurial to operational. And, when you become one of the largest distribution networks in the world, as Nike has become, that it becomes an operational business.
Back then, part of the deals, were you signing, besides the endorsements, and I'm sure you had all kinds of things triggered in there with appearances and XYZs in there for other kind of triggers on product. Were you guys already thinking about licensing and revenue share model off of products sold back then with certain lines, or was that a Jordan thing that took off, or was it done before that.
It was the Jordan thing that took off with respect to Jordan because it was Michael Jordan.
Jordan, yeah.
And he all he had to do was show up and it worked. It doesn't necessarily work that way with other players and other athletes. But I always described to the philosophy that if you wanted an athlete to live in the product, like really live in it, where no matter where they went, they had a swoosh on them someplace, you give them a royalty because they think that every time somebody sees them wearing a swoosh that, the cash register is ringing on their behalf. So, but you can't always do that because ultimately then your margins disappear. So you have to be careful about that stuff. So there's only a handful of athletes that really the royalty thing works for. And then the rest, there typically should be a reason, behind it. And I think now a lot of the reasoning behind signing athletes comes, we talked about this earlier about cause marketing.
Yeah.
And, one of the criteria that you look at now when you're looking at athletes is, what are the causes? What are they willing to stand up for? And, what causes are they involved with? Because that's important. And it's important for the consumer, because they want to see that these people represent something more than just, speed, distance, time, score, all that stuff. What are they doing to give back? How are they using the power or the influence that they have for the betterment of society, for that matter? We had the good fortune of working with a lot of great athletes and a lot of great people. I mean, Andre, when I talk about Andre Agassi, I mean, it's, I knew Andre from, 14, 15 years old. And I watched Andre over the years become the person that he is today. So he went from, when we first met, he had long hair, down the middle of his back on one side. The other side was shaved and, a pinky finger in the earring and all that stuff. He went from that person to, the person that he became after that, where, the charter schools that he's built and operated all over the country, the Boys and Girls Club that he built in Vegas, the charter school that he built in Vegas, where all those kids go to that school on scholarship. It's pretty, it's that's to see an athlete, to see somebody that uses their power and their influence, for the betterment of those less fortunate. It's pretty amazing.
Would you use meeting their parents, forget the agents for a second, but meeting their parents, meeting their families, would you use that as kind of a benchmark on how you think that athlete was going to be and
Absolutely.
deal with? Yeah.
Absolutely. That was always like, so first you watch the player and you see how they play. And then I would go, okay, well, who's the coach? And then, that to me would matter. And then you look at the family and, because, I always say this. I mean, it's one thing to watch somebody win a match. It's another thing to how do they react at 5-5 in the third set? That's how where an athlete's true colors will come out. And when you see them perform under those scenarios, that tells you a lot.
Yeah. What'd you think of the Williams's dad, King Richard? Yeah.
He was a character. He was a character.
Was the movie, did it portray him pretty well? Was it?
I think that there's a lot of it, there's a lot of Richard Williams in that. My experience with him was, it was a good experience. It was interesting. Because when I first met him, it was at a tournament in Oakland, and then I went and visited them in Florida when I think the girls were about 13 or 14, and we spent some time together, and I actually hit with both of them. And I thought at the time that Serena was actually going to be the better player just by the way she played on the court. But it's unbelievable what they did and what they have done and what both of the girls have meant for tennis, and more importantly for other girls that would aspire to careers in tennis. I think that they've been incredible role models. And the game is the game's, as they always say, the game survives, the players come and go. But I mean, there's an era there that will never be forgotten for what they brought to the sport. But there's always the next generation of kids coming, and there's always going to be turnover. So it's interesting to see what the second half looks like for both Venus and Serena. So then when I went to Nike, I was actually at Nike when we did the deal for U.S. Sports to leave Adidas and come and be a part of Nike. That was in 1993. And, we've been there ever since. I think we're one of the longest running licensing deals that Nike has. And, it's a great marriage because, Nike's all about sport and all about keeping kids moving and keeping kids active. And that's what U.S. Sports Camps is all about is providing an environment for kids to just go to camp and get better or they just want to get better so they can make the high school team. The vast majority of our camps are skill development camps. And, the kids they want to have fun. They want to learn. They want to get better. They want to make the team. And it's been a phenomenal business.
Yeah. How about just the last question, and this one will make you think a little bit. What's the best advice? Those moments that you have right now where you kind of, you think, or you got challenges in your career back then. What was that piece of advice that one of your mentors gave you early on that really carried you through, that always kind of popped up when you thought about it? When you had that struggle or you had that moment, what's that best advice you ever received?
It's hard to pick one, but I'll tell you a piece of advice that I got from a former head of sales at Nike, a guy by the name of Nick Kartalis. And this is going way, way, way back, and it's not so much advice as it's sort of something to live by. And, what Nick said one time, and I always remember, he said, if you never tell a lie, you never have to remember anything. Because it's just that level of trust that you have to have when there's a lot of money at stake. And if I find out that it's not true, then, and then it gets back, it's just not a great way to do business. So you have to trust the people that you're working with, and you want to do business with people that you can trust, we've been able to, have careers doing things that we really love and that we care about. I mean, I consider that, a luxury as well, as opposed to other things that you could be doing. I mean, obviously you pursue your passions, but I think we've been lucky in that we've been able to make a living in the sports business.
Amen. We got a living legend in the sports marketing industry, and certainly with Nike, we're one of the originals, and all the things that you're doing now to bring these camps out to life to these kids and everything that you're putting your heart and soul back into this industry, and everybody's grateful for it. And I'm grateful that you joined us today.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. And it's been fun.
Let's certainly has been. We will, sir. Enjoy your Friday. That's Ian. I'm Rob. You're watching MyConnectSports.com. See you later.
Thanks, Rob.